Right, so here we are again, champions, back with our little history segment. But of course, we've grown to be 100 years old, at least, even though Mr. Fish is pretty close, and so is Mr. Buse to 100 anyway. So we're actually not dressed up. This is what we normally wear. Mr. B, last week in our little history segment, we got a whole heap of stuff about the first school and your relatives, and you talked about a boat. Now, is that the boat?
This is the boat. So this was a Laco-built boat and absolutely renowned for building most beautiful craft. This is called a Cooter Boat. And so what used to happen is the fishermen used to sail out through the heads, go and catch cooter, which is a particular type of, fast-moving, high-predator fish, and then they would sail as fast as they could back to the fish market, and the first boat back would get the best prices. And so it was always this competition between all the fishermen, who was the best sailor, who could get their catch and then get back to sail. So this was pushed in off Rosebud, so it's a Laco boat, and these are the men of the village that all helped to get it into the water, and this would be at the old pier. So that's my great-grandfather there, helping the other men push it in.
Yeah, and the old pier's at Rosebud Parade, isn't it?
Yeah, so you
It's
go...
right opposite Rosebud Parade.
That's it.
Yeah. Righto, so Cooter boats now, Mr. B, are very, very popular again, and they sort of all fell into disrepair,
They did.
but now they are worth a fortune, aren't they?
Absolutely. The way they used to work it was the fishermen that were particularly good and the boat builders that built them, they were excellent sailors, and they would have Cooter boat races, and then they would sell the winning boat to the wealthy people in the city of Melbourne, who would then come down and use them for sport, but it would finance the fishermen and the boat builders for their next season.
Yeah, unreal. And this one's a cracker, Mr. B, isn't it?
So this is just across the road here, and that is what the Nepean Highway looked like, and that was the way that it was. So this is just after a rain. You can see that there's some puddles there, the old buildings, and the first of the electricity lines running through the town.
Yeah. And this one's one of the stores in the town.
So there's another one, this one.
This one here.
So this was the little post office built on its own, and you can see that's absolutely tiny. That would have only been just big enough for someone to go in, collect their mail, and with whoever ran the post office to be there and to service them. But you can see that that's just a little tiny structure, and then from there, once it was demolished and the town started to grow a bit, this became sort of like the main street, and so the post office was actually located in here, as was the baker's. And in fact, my uncle, when he was a little boy, used to go on a cart just like this one and deliver the bread all round around the town, around the district, with my great uncle Lou, who sadly drowned in a freshly dug drainage culvert down opposite the Rosebud Hotel.
We won't tell anybody what he was doing at the time.
You can guess. So,
Righto, and this one's a cracker. It sort of looks like the whole group of kids just behind the school, I reckon, that one.
So really early days, and probably around the turn of the century. There's another one there where the one on your knee there.
Yep.
This is actually Armistice Day, where the whole school turned out to march along the highway with the lads in front banging on the old gasoline cans. A fella here with a horn, and so that was the whole of the school.
Right, and we spoke about the Bushes last time, Mr. B.
So this was the girl that my original ancestor forebear actually met and came down to Rosebud and went on to have all of those people that eventually became my family and helped settle Rosebud.
Yeah.
The first settlement down here.
And what about this one, Mr. B?
That is my grandfather, who would have been about 5 or 6 years of age. on his way to the barber to get his hair cut. You can see that he's got tons of curls and need of them. But it gives you an idea of the clothes that they wore at the time when they were dressed up for a photograph. And the photograph wasn't, let's take a selfie and have a look at it. A photograph was really quite an event. And it only happened just a very few times in a lifetime for most people. And so this would have been one of those special occasions.
Now this one here is 1947, so what's the significance of this one, Mr. B?
Well, this just shows the number of seniors in the school at that time, and so it was a year that my mother actually attended. She's actually here in this photograph, and there's another one where she's holding a shield, and I think we still have this shield at the school.
I'm sure we have that shield at the school.
Yeah, so here we are all these years later, so that would have been about 1946, and here we are all these years later, and that shield and others like it are still with us.
It's still our athletic shield.
There you go.
Still used for our house athletics.
How's that?
That's amazing, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's lovely to have that history. Now, I'm not sure what this one is, Mr. B.
All right, so it's a bit hard to make this one out, but when you drive out the back of Safeway, as you go up onto McDowell Street, if you look straight up, you'll see a big palm tree. Well, that palm tree was actually next to a little house that my grandfather built in 1924, and it was demolished in the late 1970s, and they noticed when they were pulling the old place apart that on the inside of one of the weatherboards was where he had actually signed it, Alan Boucher, 9th of the 1st, 1924. So there's a photograph that Mr. Taylor will be able to put up that will show that little cottage that he built, which was for a spinster, and her name was Nichols, connected to the Nichols families in Rosebud.
Yep.
And so she had the opportunity to be able to live there for her lifetime, but when she passed on, then it reverted back to the family. So.
Oh, there you go. Righto. Okay, fantastic, Mr. B. We'll continue on.
Well, we can, because this being a celebration of 100 years.
Yep.
And living with olden day stuff. I've brought in some bits and bobs because I've been a bit of a collector down through the years that I thought you might be interested in, and I thought you would appreciate this
Oh,
too.
most certainly. I'm probably still using half of those things, Mr. B.
So, if I can get this out. So this is a set of old scales. So back in the olden days, particularly for those people interested in prospecting and gold and all those sorts of things, it was important to be able to measure what it is that you actually procured. Or in a household, it would be where you would measure those things that you would administer to the family, medicines and those sorts of things, because a lot of it was actually done in the home and would only be for exceptional things that you would go send off somebody on a horse to get the doctor to come and treat you. So a lot of it was actually done by the folk in the home, and so they would use things like this to be able to measure those ingredients that they would use. So, old set of scales.
Scales, yeah. They have little weights that they put on those. What about this one, Mr. B?
Well, this is for many people that were interested in what was happening at the time, all the rest of it. A lot of our history is actually marked by wars. And so what war happened when, what date, those sorts of things. And where now we have, documentaries and television and YouTube and all those things online that we enjoy in order to be able to get information about where we are and what's going on around our world. Things were much slower and much more deliberate. And so this was actually crafted around about 200 years ago, and it was just immediately after the Napoleonic Wars. So you may have heard of Napoleon. And inside this is a little description. So this would be like reading or watching a documentary now. And in here is a series of what they call plates. And so it used to be all attached on a ribbon, and it would pull out, and then you would read the information, look at the picture. And so this was all about the naval battles between the French and the English in the very beginning of the 1800s. Beginning of the 19th century. So that's about 200 years old.
200 years old. Now, Mr. B, some might say that you might need this now.
Could need a trim.
Could need a trim.
So this is called a Cutthroat Razor. Yep, so from Solingen, and just out of old bits and bobs from early days. And so this is the way people used to trim their face, and they would use it on what was called a strop, and soap up, and then shave carefully. And so that's a old, what they call a cutthroat razor.
Yeah, Mr. B, I was actually old enough. My father used to use a cutthroat razor, and he taught me to use a cutthroat razor. And I bet you can guess what the razor strop was for. Mr. Fisher used to get that around on his bottom quite regularly. This is a cracker.
It is.
Look at that.
But we might get to that because we're still
Oh,
on
we're
the
still on the
razors.
razors.
Yeah.
Probably better do a segue back into the razors.
Yeah, so these are how razors actually developed. And so that was the next one from the strop or the cutthroat. And so you would put the blade into there and then hold that while you shaved. And then from there went to this one. So this is sort of more advanced. And same thing, used to hold the blade. But the amount of trouble I used to go to, whereas everything's disposable now, this was made to last for a lifetime. And then this was the next advance again. So these are the ones that I remember when I was a boy.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And they used to call those a safety razor, I believe,
That's
Mr.
it.
B, because this could be quite dangerous, as you could quite imagine, having a blade on your chin.
Exactly.
Ouch.
Okay, so that's it for the razors. And then this, an old style lock. And I just thought might be of interest to see something that has been so beautifully made and still around and working functionally.
Still
Beautiful.
working, a lot different to some of the things today that last 5 minutes, Mr. B.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Now, the last thing I've got,
Oh, in the pocket. I wonder what this could be.
so this
Oh, wow.
is an old style, what's called a fob watch. And so a fob watch was carried by men, gentlemen with their suits, and quite often have a chain. I actually had one on this, but I gave it as a gift to my daughter's mum many years ago. And so this is it. This is actually still working, still keeps beautiful time. And this is a fob watch. So beautifully made and still going after all these years.
It's amazing. They used to be handed down from one generation to the
Yeah,
next, Mr. B, didn't
that's
they?
it.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. There you go.
Very good.